To ascend, you either need to complete the Trial of Sekhemas or the Trial of Chaos. These encounters have multiple difficulty levels. Now, this video is talking about the first difficulty for the Trial of Sekhemas, which you will encounter within Act 2. This is how most players are going to get their first ascension. And if you're wondering why am I making this video, it's because it took me 3 tries and I'm a pretty experienced ARPG player. So if it took me a couple tries, odds are other people are going to be struggling as well, and maybe this video can help you out a little bit. Just keep in mind this video is aimed exclusively at the Trial of Sekhemas you encounter in the campaign, and it may not apply to future levels. That said, if you want to know how to do the later versions of a mechanic, as I keep playing, as I explore and learn more, I'm going to make videos documenting my experiences. So get subscribed and ring that notification bell to see all future videos. With that out of the way, how do you enter the Trial of the Sekhemas? Before you can get into the Trial of the Sekhemas, you need to defeat Balbala. She's found in the zone that bears her name, the Traitor's Passage. Now, if you're a ranged build, I don't expect you're going to struggle with Balbala all that much. But if you're a melee build, you may struggle quite a bit more. Or maybe I'm just bad, I don't know. I personally found her to be pretty tricky, especially keeping uptime on the boss because she moved around so much. Now, most of her attacks are fairly obvious, but just because you can see something doesn't mean you can avoid it. Might take a couple of attempts. Just do your best to anticipate her moves, i.e. so you're rolling proactively in the direction she is going, rather than just kind of rolling and panic dodging blindly. But there is one mechanic that I really want to elaborate on, because it's not exactly obvious, and this is the one where Balbala disappears, and the room slowly fills with poison. You need to run around until you spot the boss. And in general, I always found she was hanging around towards the outer edge, but that was only a couple of attempts, so maybe sometimes she chills near the middle as well. Remember, you move fast by sticking towards the center, that's also where the poison's creeping in. So personally, I found a middle distance was much more effective. After you locate the boss, she does a slam attack, then you continue the fight as before. After you defeat Balbala, you gain a Baria, a special coin imbued by a Jinn. Once you have this, you can take it back to the Ardura caravan and navigate to the Trial of the Sekhemas. Before entering the trial, Balbala is going to give you a relic. These are a form of character progression tied exclusively to the Trial of the Sekhemas. They can be very powerful, offering you bonuses like life or damage resistance for your honor. But since you obtain them randomly within the trial, you're probably not going to be using any aside of the one Balbala gives you for your first attempt. But there is one big way in which the Trial of the Sekhemas varies from normal gameplay. In normal gameplay, you have health and maybe some energy shield. You lose those, you die. In the Trial of the Sekhemas, you also have honor. Now, when you take damage, you lose honor. But, unlike health, you don't have an honor flask. And your normal other methods of recovery, things like regeneration and leech, also don't work on honor. In general, the only way to recover honor is through special shrines that you find throughout the run. This means your recovery is limited and you should do your best to avoid taking damage. That said, for your first trial, if you do end up taking a bunch of damage, you die, you fail, don't worry about it, you can just speak to Balbala, get another coin, and keep trying. There's essentially no risk aside of the time that you spend, but hey, maybe you'll get some EXP or some relics in exchange, which could help you in your next run. More about that in a minute, though, because first of all, I want to talk about the Trial of the Sekhemas and how you navigate using the map. This allows you to see upcoming rooms, the type of challenges they offer, the rewards, and any afflictions marked in purple. Afflictions are penalties that persist through the rest of your run. Some of these can be trivial, say an affliction that removes your energy shield on a build that doesn't use that defensive mechanic. But others can be absolutely devastating, such as hiding what rooms are ahead of you so you don't know what's coming, or massively increasing monster health or damage, making it much more likely you're going to fail. Use the map to not only look at your current room, to A, target rewards that you want, such as going for a shrine if you're on low honor, or B, going for a particularly valuable reward, like a golden key that you can turn in at the end, but also use it to plan your route and avoid consequences. So if you conceive of a really nice room only leads into a place with an affliction, something that could bring your run to an end, it's better to go around and take the lesser reward in the short term. And so now, to help you better navigate this, let's go over the different room types and the challenges each pose. First, you have the escape rooms. For these, you need to click the death crystals before the timer runs out. Now so far, I found the timer for this is pretty tight for the first couple crystals. You only have a few seconds to spare to get from one to another to another. And every time you click one, you'll get a little hint about where the next one is. But, as you click more and more crystals and as the time stacks up, I found it gets pretty generous, to the point where you can actually take your time, maybe loot some optional chests, and of course, deal with any problematic enemies along the way. Ultimately, I think escape rooms and clicking the death crystals are the easiest challenge, at least so far, so I always tend to go to those if I have the option. Next up is the gauntlet. We avoid traps and use levers to open doors so that you can exit the area. The traps, by themselves, aren't necessarily all that threatening. When you have an enemy trying to kill you that can stand in a trap, and you can't because you'll take damage and lose honor, things get a little bit more problematic, especially if you're a melee build. If you're a range build, maybe not as much of an issue. Remember, you can always use terrain to line of sight things, as this is helpful not only for blocking traps, but also enemy attacks. So far, I haven't found the gauntlets to be super difficult, although I do often take a little bit of damage just because I don't play perfectly. They are also quite long, which does make them annoying. Then you have the Hourglass Challenge. Survive until the timer runs out. You have to be particularly mindful of ranged enemies and rares here. It's really easy to get tagged from a distance, or just have a really shitty rare modifier combination, and end up taking damage that you really shouldn't be. So far, I have found Hourglass to be the most difficult. This is because, yes, you have to survive for a timer, but that also means killing the enemies doesn't really matter. More of them are just going to spawn as the timer ticks down. Then you have Chalices. In a Chalice challenge, you have to kill the rares to fill the chalice. This is either incredibly easy, or really difficult depending on the affix combination of rares. In some cases, I basically just blow away the rare and it doesn't do anything because its affixes just mean it makes an AoE on the ground every few seconds. Other times, it's something where the rare is actively screwing over your build. Maybe it has a bubble that you need to go into to damage it, but the bubble makes you super slow. Maybe it drains your flask charges. Then you have Ritual, where you kill the ritual summoners to disable the portals. Monsters will continue to flow through the portals so long as the summoners are alive. So while you can passively AoE down the monsters, don't get too caught up in that. Target the summoners as they are squishy. I found this to be pretty easy, possibly even a little bit easier than Escape sometimes, though the number of portals and what they summon is random, which I would say ultimately means on average it's going to be slightly harder. So in short, your priority when navigating here should be number 1, to avoid bad afflictions. Number 2, to look for super valuable rewards that can save your run. Something like a shrine that can recover your honor if your honor is low. And number 3, to do challenges that you feel are manageable. If you're really struggling with Gauntlet, for example, avoid that one. If you have absolutely no problem AoEing down all the enemies in Hourglass, target those as you're going to have an easy time. Do what is easy for your build. Personally, again, I found both Escape and Ritual to be the easiest, but I do expect your mileage is going to vary. Now, as you're going through, something else that you might notice your character gaining is Sacred Water. This is a resource used within the Trial of Sekhemas. You gain it by killing monsters and completing rooms. It can be used to activate shrines, take on an oath effect, or spent at a shop on various boons. So, what is this oath? Essentially, it's an upside and a downside. And it is a very double-edged sword, because the options presented are random. So you could get something really good, like removing an affliction that's been absolutely ruining your day, or you could get something bad, like take on a random affliction and you think, how bad could it be? And then the monkey paw curls, and it's the worst possible thing for your build, and your run shortly afterwards comes to an end. One thing I have gone out of my way for, at least so far, is Balbala's shop. She sells a variety of boons that you can use to make your run easier, and an item that you can use to restore your honor. Last up, sometimes there's a greater shrine that not only restores your honor, but gives you a boon. I always go for that one if it's at all reasonable. Yeah, sometimes it's tied to an affliction that really sucks, or leads to an affliction that really sucks, but aside of that, I go for it because more honor is good, and the boon is going to make my run easier. If you make it through 8 rooms, you get to fight the floor 1 boss, Rattle Cage the Earthbreaker. And yes, this Rocky Horror is the only thing standing between you and Ascension. So, here's a quick breakdown of his moves. First up, the very first thing he always does at the start is a triple explosion. Each explosion has a bigger radius of AoE. So, right off the start, and whenever Balbala tells you to stand clear, run away from the boss. He's going to explode boom, boom, boom. After that, you can move in and start doing damage. As you do, watch out for his melee attacks and his slam attack. His slam attack hits pretty hard and it will do significant damage to your honor. His melee attacks, not so much, but remember you can dodge roll through them to avoid damage. Occasionally, when he slams the ground, fire snakes out from a point of impact. This will end in a couple little volcanoes. These are really bad, because this is area denial. From now on, they're just going to shoot little fiery projectiles. Now, if the option is stand in a big old explosion and run through one of them, absolutely run through one of them. Just keep in mind as you run through, there's a chance one of those projectiles will hit you, and it may damage your honor. This means, while the play space looks nice and big and open, you fight the boss in a big old room, as the fight goes on, this play space becomes more and more and more constricted. As his health gets lower, he also starts slamming the ground. As he does, this destabilizes the cave, causing things to rain down from the ceiling, dealing damage if you're caught beneath them. There's a little swirly smoke effect that you can kind of use to see where it is, but the effect from the explosion is quite large, so do be very careful and don't stand right next to the little swirly smoke thing. In short, don't tank the explosion and watch for the space to get smaller and smaller as the boss's health gets lower. With that said, you've seen a few clips of my fight against the boss so far. Here's the full thing, uncut, unedited.
Time. Look out for the slam. Come here. This is proof of my strength. I knew you would succeed.
To be honest with you, I suspect that would have been much easier if I was a ranged build, because even just having Earth Shatter, which is a pseudo-range melee ability, made the fight much, much easier than my first 2 attempts. That's how I got through it, and how I earned my ascension. And so with that, you should have all the information you need to take on the first trial of the Sekhemas and earn your own ascension. Good luck! Don't worry too much if you fail a couple times. Like I said, it happened to me, and you can always just talk to Balbala and try again. Of course, to ascend again, you're going to need to complete another trial, but more about that in a future video. For now, I need to get back to the campaign, as there's a lot to learn here. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, do be sure to give it a like, maybe share it with a friend if they're struggling. And with that said, I'll see you in the next one.